My name is Ryan Wiksell. I'm the associate priest here at Grace and Holy Trinity Cathedral. I've been doing that for just over a year, and I love it, so I'm in that category too. But since that's against my own rules, if I could do anything, I'd probably try to do something with my music degree. My bachelor's degree is in music, and I did composition and saxophone performance and those things. But those have fallen off the radar for me, and I would probably bring those back. So that's me. So we just burned 24 minutes. Well, we started late on introductions, but that's a good thing because I don't know that much about the Enneagram. So it's good to use up all this time, but less pressure on me. No, the reason why it's important is because, as you may recall from the email that I sent out to you, this is not an informational class. This isn't something, well, I didn't know that. No, there's some of that to it. This is about learning about ourselves, right? And hopefully in the process, learning about one another. You all may not see each other again after this class. Some of you will, obviously. But ultimately, if we walk away from this knowing ourselves better, understanding how we have grown, how we can still grow, then we've done something here, right? And so to take this kind of time to get to know each other is important. So that all sounds warm and fuzzy, but I actually have some bad news for you, and that's that it's all hopeless. Everything, all this, nothing, I don't have anything for you. There is no chance of making it work, of finding a solution to the human condition. And what we have here with the Enneagram is just 9 different ways of people try to cope, try to manage, even though we're doomed to fail. So good night. And that is true in a sense. That's something that hit me really strongly when I was very first getting into Richard Rohr, and some of you brought that book with you. So, teacher's pet, I don't know. But when you use Richard Rohr as the foundation of knowledge for the Enneagram, you get a little bit more of the negative side than the positive side. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But it just really struck me and I did it audiobook style. So as I was listening to Richard Rohr and talking about the Enneagram, it just occurred to me, oh, there is no solution. There isn't a way to figure out how to be as a human being so that everything works. And that's why all of these are sort of co-equal types on the Enneagram, 9 different ways of failing almost. And this is just what worked for me the best, or what fails the least, or however I was raised as a child to see life. None of them really fix the problem. So, but to address that, sometimes we do, especially when we're looking at anything through a spiritual perspective. Sometimes we have to sort of sit with the problem, sit in the darkness before we start to let the light in. And if you follow the church calendar, you might be thinking of Lent or thinking of Advent, the penitential seasons that lead up to the resurrection or the nativity. You just sit in it for a minute and you consider, we don't have the answers, right? And when we each sit in isolation, then that's true. That's kind of all we have. But if we are going to come together with something like this, or something like church, or like family, or friends, or whatever social group that we have, then we can look to Paul. Especially in 1 Corinthians 12:20, which I'm going to read an abridged version of right here. There is one body, but it has many parts. You all are familiar with this. But all its parts make up one body. Suppose the foot says, I am not a hand, so I don't belong to the body. By saying this, it cannot stop being part of the body. And suppose the ear says, I am not an eye, so I don't belong to the body. By saying this, it cannot stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, how could it hear? If the whole body were an ear, how could it smell? God has placed each part in the body just as he wanted it to be. If all the parts were the same, how could there be a body? As it is, there are many parts, but there is only one body. And as we know, this scripture is talking about the church, right? I mean, Paul is specifically thinking about the church as he's writing this to the church in Corinth and saying, hey, you all need to settle down, stop trying to be a hero. Every one of you needs each other. So it is about the church and how to be the church, but it doesn't have to be. It can really be about the human condition, about being a society, about being a city, about being a family. So it shows the nature of being human is to need each other. And we can see that in the animal world, too. You see some of your lone animals that tend to, octopus, I don't know. Some of these animals like to go it alone, right? And you hardly ever see them in groups. My daughter is a huge fan of owls. Everything must be owls, owls, owls. And of course, they have their families. They raise their chicks and all of that. But you don't tend to see owls in groups. They are by themselves. But then there's the social creatures. And we, of course, are social creatures. And not just because we sort of don't like being alone or we just like each other's company or it's more fun. But it is because each one of us is just one slice of humanity. None of us can express more than just that one little piece. And it's as we find each other and start to understand ourselves and each other that we get a well-rounded picture of what it means to be human at all. I can't understand myself without you, in other words. So we need to celebrate these differences, and we need to, well, some of us have problems celebrating others, and some of us have problems celebrating ourselves. And we see that in different places on the Enneagram circle. So let me just give you a really quick background, very quick, of the history of the Enneagram. Because as some of you know, it is really old, or at least the roots of it are really old. It goes all the way back. It goes through Christianity, through Judaism, through Islam, and especially for 7 of the 9 types, which you can't really name them by number exactly which ones are the oldest. But 7 types trace all the way back to the Desert Fathers, specifically a guy named Evagrius Ponticus, where he equated some of these 7 deadly sins and the 7 virtues with 7 different types of people. And so is kind of out of that started to flow the sense that God has made us different. And we should try to understand what type of person God has made us to be. So fast forward all the way to the 1960s, you got a guy named Oscar Ichazo. He began teaching the Enneagram more as we know it today, with all 9 of those types and with some of the connections between them and the titles, the labels for them. And he was in South America, and it was there that a group of Jesuits picked this up. They really learned the system. They developed the complexities. They brought it back with them to the United States. And of course, Richard Rohr, being a Jesuit, he picked it up from them, and many of us picked it up from Richard Rohr. And a lot of the books that I've read to prepare for this, and some of the ones that are in the course description, will name drop Richard Rohr, and that's where they got it from. So he's kind of, in some ways, the godfather of this for us. And I should have said, interrupt me with questions at any point or corrections at any point. I know we have some expertise in the room, and not just from one person either, about this. So if I say something wrong, let me know, or if I'm unclear, let me know, or just ask a question. So from there, Enneagram gained popularity as a tool, specifically within spiritual direction. And I don't know if any of you have ever had a session with a spiritual director, or maybe even have a regular spirit. I have a spiritual director right now, and she's in Atlanta, and we do Zoom sessions. But it's within that context of spiritual direction that it's become the most popular, because it is that way of trying to kind of hone in on what your motivations are and why you do and say the things you do and say. So I just have a few, we're going to move in just a few minutes to an opportunity to type yourself. But before we do, I wanted to give a few disclaimers about that. The Enneagram, first of all, is a dynamic system. I'm going to tell you what it is and what it isn't. It's a dynamic system developed primarily in these oral traditions in the context of relationships between students and teachers, and not as some sort of fixed mathematical reality. So a dynamic system is one that recognizes that humans are far too complex and nuanced to be pinned down, right? And to know, this is it, this is what I am, I'm done, right? And that's part of the value, the beauty of the complexity of the Enneagram. It is simple enough that you could get into it. By the end of this class, you'll know what it is, but you could spend the rest of your life digging in deeper and deeper and deeper and gaining more self-understanding through that. So that's a dynamic system. It supports the evolving and maturing human journey. So the Enneagram is a dynamic system. It is not a strict law or a code. It's not telling you how to live your life. It's not telling you do's and don'ts. Its categories aren't meant to bind or to restrict you in any way, or to say, well, sorry, you had these big dreams, but you can't do those because you're the wrong type, you know? Now, there's a lot of people who know the Enneagram in a superficial way, people who don't go out of their way to take a class like this, right? And they think it's about putting people into boxes. You might know some of these people if you watch TV with them. So they'll know what Enneagram number all of the characters are in the show that you're watching. They'll have everybody psychoanalyzed and figured out, you know, and it's easy to do that in your relationships as well, the people you work with, the people you go to church with. It's like, oh, she is such a 7, right? Bless her heart, she's a 7. We love her anyway, right? Or whatever it is. But rather than putting people into these boxes or into these circles, as it were, it is meant to free people from those boundaries, from those limitations. Because there is the whole breadth of the human experience. They are available for you. And self-understanding is a huge part of gaining that. So having said that, let's see. Another thing that the Enneagram is a powerful tool, as I've said, for self-discovery and spiritual transformation, but it should not be your only tool, and it's not designed to be mutually exclusive with other things. And a lot of you probably have done the Myers-Briggs, or maybe you subscribe to Zodiac, or all these different kinds of ways of understanding yourself and understanding the human condition. And I have not met one yet that actually is incompatible with the Enneagram. So to me, it's yes and. You know, this is just one more unique way. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. You know, that's great. There's so many other tools. The Enneagram is not just a personality typing system. There are tests and quizzes, and we're going to do one of those quizzes here soon, that help you identify your primary Enneagram type, but that's often just the first step. It's meant to help you over a lifelong journey. And you may discover some things tonight and over the next few weeks that 10 years from now you'll throw out. Maybe it's because you have changed, or maybe just because your understanding changes, and that's great. That's how it's supposed to be. But while self-discovery is important, it's not the Enneagram's final objective. The Enneagram's purpose is to help us uncover the traps that keep us from living fully and freely as our true self. So we'll use our unique, authentic gifts for the good of others and for the good of the world. And even though it is a downer for those of you who've spent some time with Richard Rohr in this book here, you start to feel the weight of that because he talks about sin a lot. And the different types are prone to different types of sins and things. And you're like, oh man, this is heavy. But the fact is, it's pointing out those traps and those obstacles and those inhibitions. And some of us, some obstacles are no problem to you. You may look at somebody else who's struggling with something like, I don't know why that is such a problem for them. It's not a big deal for me. But then, of course, something you're constantly tripping over, someone else has no issue with. Why is that? You know, and unless we're willing to dig in, and as I said at the beginning, kind of sit in the darkness a little bit, to sit with the problem a little, then we're going to keep on tripping over those same things and not understanding why other people are tripping over things that don't bother us. So feel like it was one other thing. Yeah, I will say, when we get into the, I'm going to talk about what each of the numbers is. But before I do, even though we use numbers, it is not mathematical. These are not value-based numbers. It took me several tries to explain that to my 6-year-old twins this morning at breakfast. I told them why I wasn't coming home for dinner this evening, and this is what I'm doing. And so I said, you can be a type 1 or type 3 or type 6. And they're like, I want to be number 1. I want to be number 1. I'm like, well, no, it's not better than, and I went even to explaining, like, how you were born on November 4th, right? Yeah. Well, are there people who were born on November 1st better than you? Did they win because they were born on the 1st? Oh, no. Okay, days are assigned labels, but we use numbers to assign labels to days, right? But that doesn't mean that, November 2nd times 2 equals November 4th, right? They don't carry value. And eventually they did get it, and they said, oh, I want to be this, or I want to be that. So, but that is something we have to get out right away, because it can be easy to start to see some as better than others. And even if your understanding is a little bit beyond my 6-year-old twins, which of course it is, it still there is a problem of people can get a little negative about, like, oh, those 8s, I say, like, he's such an 8, as if 8 is a bad thing to be. But they are all co-equal in that sense. There is the force, the light side and the dark side to every one of these. So now I'm getting into some material that you have in front of you with your handout. And I'm going to just put some labels to these on the board as well. And even though 1 is not the best, I'm going to start with 1 anyway. Because 1, type 1, the most common label you'll see for them is the perfectionist. And as we're going through these, it's probably worth noting the relationships that they have with their immediate neighbors, and that's called the wings. So a 1 can kind of lean towards a 2 if they are more of a helper. A 2 can lean towards a 3 if they are more of an achiever, because that's the label for number 3 most commonly. Or a helper can lean more if they're more of a perfectionist. They can lean more towards number 1. So a helper that leans in the direction of number 1 would be called a 2-wing 1. You don't have to think about that if you don't want to. If that's more complexity than you need, don't worry about it. But it is interesting to note the relationships with each one's immediate neighbor. So 4, sorry, I'm getting kind of low here. 4 is the individualist. I think that's the one that my kids said they wanted to be when I was talking this morning. I said the 4 just wants to be special more than anything else.
Are your children identical twins?
They're fraternal. I have a boy and a girl.
I just wondered if they would end up necessarily being the same.
If we talked about it enough, I'm sure they would. They're pretty different. They really are. I doubt they're the same Enneagram type. I'm trying to hold off a little bit and not just immediately, swoop in and label them. But 5 is the investigator. 6 is the loyalist, team player. 7 is the enthusiast, life of the party. 8 is the challenger, or the reformer sometimes. And 9 is the peacemaker, and 9 is the one that tends to see the most of the other numbers in themselves, too. And if you take one of these tests and you read all 9 and you say, these all look great, I see myself with a little bit of each of these, there's a decent chance you're a 9. So, I talked about the wings for a second. The other, when you drill down a level deeper, the other things worth mentioning are the connecting lines. So you see when you flip through to each of those types, the very first thing it mentions is your connecting lines. And there's been some different opinions about this throughout the history of Enneagram thinking. More original thinking is that if you are a 1, Now, I don't remember which is which, but they'll say in stress, you tend to become more of a 4, and in strength, or there's all different terms for it. In strength, maybe you tend to become more of a 7. More recent thinking says that it doesn't matter. There's not one negative and one positive, that it's a little bit different for everybody. But it is worth, if you're one, noting, it's like, oh, in these kinds of situations, I become more of an individualist. Or in these other kinds of situations, I become more of an enthusiast. So that's what these connecting lines are. And they are reversible. So same would go if you are a 4 in certain situations, you are more of a 1. In other situations for 4, the connecting line goes to 2. More of a helper. What's interesting then is you've got 3, 9, and 6 are sort of off to themselves. You see there's just a triangle here where they only connect with each other on those lines. I remember what I was meaning to say before, I was forgetting to say, is that an important thing to think of when typing yourself or learning the types of others is that the main thing that the Enneagram seeks to define is motivations. And that's not something that's always obvious, because two people can behave the same way, can have the same types of outward expression, but be motivated in completely opposite ways. And you'll see that when you read the descriptions of each of these numbers, that the number 1 will be motivated by what's good and right and perfect. Number 2 will be motivated by receiving love from others, and they tend to achieve it by being helpful. 3 will be motivated by success and accomplishment, achievement. 4 will be motivated by creativity, and so on and so forth. And that's why they're the individualist. This special one is like, well, if I do something no one else has ever done, then that will give me some worth as a person. And that individualist may do the exact same thing as the achiever does in the end, but they'll have arrived at it through very different routes. And we really can't understand people. We can't understand people just by what they do or by what they say. We need to understand ourselves and others by how we got there, what motivated us to do it. So we've got the wings. Again, please, questions if you have them at any time. We've got the wings with the neighbors, the neighboring numbers. We've got the connecting lines going across the circle. The only other thing I want to mention here before we take the test is the subtypes. And I didn't really give myself any more room to write up here, but it is in your, I think it's in there, yeah. We've got the subtypes. Oh, yeah, instinctual subtypes. And that's just to drill down a little further if you want a more detailed idea of, well, what kind of 6 am I? And the subtypes have to do with how you express yourself as that number. There's the self-preservation, there's the one-on-one, and there's the social. And you can see that circle expanding outward. Self-preservation being just about you, one-on-one being, obviously just 2 people, and the social being a larger group. So you'll start to see that explain itself a little bit more as we go on. But if, say for instance, you are the individualist and you want to be special, if you're a self-preservationist, you are doing something special in order to protect your self-worth. That you have a certain image of self, a certain identity, and that if you don't continue being special, then you will lose your identity and your sense of self. And that's more of a self-preservation. A one-on-one, for example, might be romance. If you're an individualist and you're a one-on-one subtype, you might express that in how you treat your significant other, or a child, or a parent, or something like that. You want to do something special for them, and that no one would ever do for them except for you. And so that's a one-on-one subtype for number 4. Or social, you're a rock star. You want to write the song that no one could ever have written besides you, and you want to share that with the world. That's a social type 4. Just a few examples. All right. Now, one thing I probably should have mentioned in the email is the way that I'd like to do this self-quiz. I want to do something that everybody can get instant results, so we can work with that right away. And that does kind of depend on everyone having a smartphone. However, I have a backup plan in case that's not workable for you. So the first page here has a QR code. And the Wi-Fi doesn't require a password at all if you just go to, I believe it's GHTC guest. Let me double check that. KC Cathedral guest. So if you go to that, there's no password required, but there is a sign-in. So it'll just take you to a page where you can say, take me to the internet.
We can't get on otherwise?
You can use your 4G or whatever, that works as well, but I'm just giving you the option to use Wi-Fi if you'd rather not use your mobile data. So you can do that, you can scan the QR code, it'll take you to the quiz. It takes about 15 minutes to do, or if that's not a solid option for you, what you can do is read through this during that time, get as much read of it as you can, and kind of decide based on that reading where you feel like you fit numbers-wise. Because that's the main point of the next 15 minutes or so, is to hone in on what is your dominant type. Absolutely, yeah. Is it iPhone or? Android. It's sometimes the photo works. You can try it going the camera at it. Yes. There you go.
So what do I do with that?
And then you just go ahead and say it and open. Go ahead and open it. Open the browser. Yep.
That was too easy.
I'm gonna apologize. I'm actually going to reverse myself because it occurred to me that in the time we have, the point of this is that I want you to take a quiz, but I also want you to decide on a type by reading through it. And I was gonna have you do the quiz now, but do the reading through the packet before next week. But let's just flip those because I'd rather give you the week to go to this website if you want to use a laptop or computer or your phone. It gives you more options. And instead, let's just see if we can't take 15 minutes to flip through the booklet that you have. Circle the phrases that feel like they really speak to you. Does anybody not have a pen? Because I have pens. Okay. And if you read something that makes you squeamish or uncomfortable or feel like personally attacked, like double underline it and put stars next to it. Because that's actually important. Anybody else?
Well, he doesn't want us to use that.
You can, and if you've got it pulled up, you can just hold on to it and do it later on. We may have received something. So let's just take this time to read through instead, yeah. Anybody else need a writing utensil? For you fast readers, this is also an awesome time to get more refreshment, so that's what I'm going to do.
People ever change?
Will you save that question for after this? I'd love to talk about that after this. Yeah. Oh. You want a different one? Yeah. See if that bothers. I'll throw this away.
Are you just reading the types?
Yeah, just read all. I mean,
Okay.
You can't scan as much as you can of the 9 types
Okay.
to kind of hone in on which one you identify with the best. Yeah. I'll let you know when we have about 5 minutes left. two really quick corrections. When you read type 4, you may have noticed the first half of the first line was the same as the beginning of the 3 page. That was just a copy paste error. So, but I don't think I took anything away from you on the type 4 page. And then also you may have noticed that the 3 is called the performer here, whereas I prefer achiever to performer. I think especially the subtypes, the social subtype, number 3, is kind of a performer, but the self-preservation and one-on-one 3s are not necessarily performers, but they are certainly achievers. So yeah, I prefer achiever for that. All right, all I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask you, now this does not have to be final, this is just the first session. You might discover new things and change your number later on, but based on what you circled or underlined or starred or whatever in that reading, I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand when I say the number that you think most characterizes you right now. So, figure this out. All right, so number 1s. And I'm going to count you before you put your... Okay, 2 of you? All right. Number 2s. 2 of you. And you're together. Oh. 2 number 2s. Okay, number 3s. 1, 2, actually myself. 3 3s. 4s. 1. You are special. Look at you. The individual 4. This cannot be more perfect. Okay. 1 4 5s. All right. No 5s. 6 6s. 1 2 3 6s. 7s. 7. Actually, I wouldn't guess. I was guessing other numbers for you. All right. 1 7 8s. Okay, no 8s. 9. Oh my goodness. 1 2 3 4 5 9s. Not 6, just 5, right? If there's 6, I was going to split you up into 2 groups. Okay, so the 9s over here, raise your hand again. You 3 are a group, and the 9s over here, the 2 of you, I would like you to join with the 1 4, and you are going to be a group. Okay? The groups that had 3 people in them, there you go. There's 3 3s, there were 3 6s, or whatever. And we're going to gather at those tables back there, and I think it's going to work out because there's 7 tables. So we'll just kind of find each other. We're going to hang out for, I think, 10 minutes, and that's about going to, well, we don't even have 10 minutes. But if you have to go, please feel free to go. But we're going to talk to one another amongst our group and just say how it is we kind of came to that. And get to know each other a little bit. So, all right, well, let's go back that way. If there's 2 of any one type, I think that could be. if, I hate to interrupt a good conversation, but if we can kind of find our way back to our seats, I'm just going to give a 2-minute wrap up here. Thank you very much.
We come when called.
The sixes come when called. Team players, absolutely.
We agree that there's so many of these answers that I try to do this, but whether I actually do this really depends on what you think.
Yeah. Right, and starting to see some of the dynamic interpersonal aspect of this. You can't live into this by yourself, right? So, all right. Well, yeah, we're past time, so I heard lots of boisterous conversation, so I hope that was meaningful to you guys. The reason for the two-part, even though I swapped the sequence of the two, the reason for the two-part exploration here is that there are kind of two schools of thought as to the best way to discover your dominant type. And one is through taking a quiz, and one is through just learning as much as you can about all 9 types and just making up your mind based on that. So now you have done one of those, you've done the second one, and obviously this is optional homework, but before next week, if you would go to that, you can see the truity.com/test, I think. Yeah, at the bottom there, /test/Enneagram-personality-test. I'll email out a link to that as well in a day or two, just as a reminder or an easier way to click. That test, that doesn't take more than 15 or 20 minutes, and it gives you a result right away. So that's something you can bring back with you. And what we're going to talk about next week is whether there was a difference between the quiz results you got and what you self-determined from reading this. And that maybe we can start to kind of triangulate in on some kind of dominant type for ourselves. And at that point, we can start talking about wings. Maybe you feel like you are a number 6, but it's like that you kind of wanting to skew out of 6 a little bit in this direction or that direction. And we can talk about that next week too. So, any questions about any of that? Yes.
The word Enneagram, what's the derivation? What is Enneagram?
9. And the gram is just the system. But any is the Greek, I believe, for 9. So, yeah. The 9 gram. Anything else?
The first time I saw that, the Enneagram, I thought it was some kind of a satanic thing.
Yeah. Well, wait till week 3. We're just scratching the surface so far, so. No, that comes at the very, very end. I'm not gonna spring Satan on you until we're almost done. So that's funny. No, it does. You're right though. There's some.
There are some people that still think that.
And the graphic we have on our screens promoting this has kind of a interesting rainbow gradient going on in it that makes it look super mysterious and stuff. But I bet it's fun. So, and that's why I had to put Christianity and the at the beginning. So it's just like. We're just going to purge that right off the bat. So, all right. Well, I am going to, feel free to grab some refreshments for the road. I'm also going to open the doors to the nave here for anybody who might want to just come over and check it out. But other than that, see you next week at 6:30. Next Wednesday at 6:30. Thanks.